Welcome to Mercer County Community College, where we are all about learning and student success. We're very excited this morning to have the Council on State Public Affairs with us to lead a discussion, and hopefully we will all be learning interesting things about our state and information that will help us to all move forward in New Jersey. Let me introduce you to Becky Perkins, who's going to be leading our panel.
Thank you, Dr. Donahue, and welcome to everyone who's here today for Mercer County, one of our series of New Jersey, State of the County and State of the Region. Council on State Public Affairs is an independent public affairs organization, and what we're doing is going across the state, building up to our State of the State event on November 28th. And this gives us a chance to really do a grassroots look at what's happening in New Jersey at a local level. So we're delighted to be here today in Mercer County, and I'm going to ask our panelists, starting from the end with Mr. Prunetti, to introduce yourselves and give us a brief look at what you do.
Sure. My name is Bob Prunetti. I am the president and CEO of the Mercer Regional Chamber of Commerce. And of course, our chamber is a member organization that represents the interests of business throughout the central New Jersey region.
Thanks. Liz?
I'm Liz Muoio. I'm Director of Economic Development and Sustainability for the County of Mercer.
And my name is Peter Crowley. I'm the President and CEO of the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're a member organization also. We cover 5 counties in central New Jersey.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to have you all here today. Let's start with a basic question. How would you all characterize the economy in Mercer County? I know Bob and Peter, you both deal with larger areas, central Jersey, but to focus specifically on Mercer County. Peter, let's start with you and go down this way. How would you characterize the economy right now?
I think the Mercer economy has been exceptionally resilient in the space of a very difficult time. It's not seeing the lows that we're seeing by other areas, and it's also seeing a little bit of recovery right now. We're seeing it across the board in some of the economic indicators that we're seeing in housing prices. We're seeing it in companies deciding to relocate here or expand here, and that's different than we've seen in the past. But we're seeing it not only in Mercer, but the peripheral areas too. So it's a very strong core, steady growth is the way that we attribute it. And
your membership ranges from global corporations to
yeah, we have Fortune 50 companies right down to small local businesses. There's about 900 businesses that are part of the chamber.
And do you think from both ends of that scale, are people feeling the same way?
It's interesting. We're seeing that the larger companies who took a little longer to get into the depths of the recession, that they had a pipeline of business, they're having a more difficult time making that turn. We're still seeing layoffs at some of the larger companies, but that's actually slowing down. The smaller companies have gone through the difficult times. They've been very resilient, and they've made the changes. So we're seeing the steady growth coming from that group, and we think that's what's going to happen. You're going to see it first in the local and regional companies, and then going back up to the Fortune 500 companies.
Liz, from your perspective?
I agree with Peter. I think resilient is resilient and improving at this point. We weathered the storm, I think, of the recession very well compared to a lot of other counties. We've steadily had roughly a full point lower unemployment rate than the rest of the state throughout the recession. We're traditionally a manufacturing county that has, lost a lot of that manufacturing sector and is now has a core governmental component. Roughly 30% of our payroll is government employees. So
state and county.
State, county, and yeah.
And local.
And we have a very strong science and tech, a very strong educational component, retail component. So we're more diversified than we used to be, but we also recognize that manufacturing is something that's been important both historically and something where there's a need now, so we're looking to improve training in those areas because we think that's something that will grow in the future.
But overall, you're feeling pretty optimistic.
Yes, yes. Like as Peter mentioned, we have a lot of companies who have not only decided to stay here, companies that have decided to locate here, companies that are expanding here, all good signs. We have educational institutions that are like the county college here where we are, Princeton University, TCNJ, all doing massive expansion projects, which, you know, bode well for the future. And we have a lot of promising things coming on the horizon, so our outlook is extremely good.
Great. And Bob, just before you get started, by way of background, we should say that your experience is probably unique in that you've been budget director in Mercer County, you've been a freeholder, you've been county executive, so you've seen the government side of it, and now involved in development both in the Mercer County Chamber and also in the Capital City Redevelopment Corporation,
Correct.
which I want to talk more about later. But tell us from your perspective, how do you think things look right now?
Well, I think there's a general sense of optimism, but that's tempered with the fact that the economy hasn't taken off as much as the optimism would have led you to believe. And so I think because of that, we start off with a spurt we've seen early in the year, and as things don't progress as quickly as some would hope, I think there's a leveling off of that optimism a little bit. And I think mainly in Mercer County, it's due to what I believe is a transition. Our economy in Mercer and throughout central New Jersey is transitioning. Liz mentioned that for the longest time, manufacturing and government had been key to our economy in Mercer County, and that's changing quite a bit. I think we're seeing throughout the state, throughout the nation, government contracting somewhat. But on the other hand, in Mercer County, I think there are some emerging industries that hold a lot of promise, and I think they're going to be the key to our success in the future. In Mercer County, we generally do better than the rest of the state. Again, Liz mentioned that we're a full point below the state average in unemployment. We have, over the last decade, increased about 1% in private job growth. The rest of the state decreased about 5% in private.
So what's the magic
growth.
bullet here in Mercer County? Why is that?
Well, I think that resilience is one. I mean, I think our industry in Mercer County has been able to withstand some of the depth of the recession, but I think we have lagged behind a little bit. We see it in our smaller companies. Actually, I think as we were in the throes of the recession, back in '09, I guess, I don't think we felt it as much in Mercer County because I think the government employment numbers lagged behind. Government loss of jobs lagged behind the private sector. So we didn't feel the depths of it, I think, until a little while longer. But I think, we've kind of gotten through that. And again, there's optimism out there. And I think truly optimism in some of our emerging industries that we can talk a little bit more about. But I think that's the difference. We are transitioning, and I think there's a lot of optimism about that.
Now, all of you are involved in economic development efforts. And Peter, why don't you talk about what you're doing at the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce?
We've actually taken a little bit of a different approach to it. There's a number of organizations that we think do a great job leading with Liz and Mercer County's Economic Development Sustainability Organization. So we've tried to figure out how do we as a chamber bring those resources together. But we've also been very successful in looking at other alternatives to grow economic development. One of them, of course, is travel and tourism. We recently released a press release with the New Jersey State Division of Travel and Tourism that Mercer County's travel expenditures exceeded $1 billion last year. And that was a 10% growth over 2010 and a 7% growth over 2009. So it's directly contributing dollars back into the economy, and we think that's an opportunity. Our Convention and Visitors Bureau has actually received funding from the state to cover all of Mercer County, to bring that increased partnership with Mercer County, with the Mercer County Sports and Entertainment Authority, with other groups to bring tourism here. And we find that to be sort of a unique opportunity to be able to carve out. The other areas, I think people are doing a very good job, and there's a lot of opportunities to bring partnerships, but bring information. That's what we try to do. Bring information to our small businesses and our regional businesses that help them grow and help them expand and let them know that there are both state and local municipal opportunities and support for them to go do that. And we find that's been very valuable.
And it sounds like there's a lot of cooperation with private enterprise and with the county, as well as
I think
the
there
state.
is, yeah.
You all work
I think Liz and her group have done a tremendous job. And in fact, you just announced that you had a $1.4 million grant for the airport that just came through that you worked on. So I mean, we're fortunate to have in Mercer County an organization like Liz runs. And we can look to that, and we do, to help us figure out how do we partner with these companies coming in. She'll bring them in, and we show them why this is the place to live and work.
So Liz, what sets your department apart from some of the other county economic development efforts, and what specifically are you doing that you would say really is responsible for the greatest success that you're having in Mercer County?
Well, I mean, like Peter said, we have good partnerships with our chambers, with our municipalities. The county executive, Brian Hughes, had a series of business roundtables, started about 3 years ago and lasted for about a year and a half, bringing in a mix of small, large employers from around the county and asked them, what is it you need to succeed during the recession, the tough years? What is it we can do as a county? And the chambers were involved in those discussions also. And a lot of what our companies needed dealt with information. We need to know who we go to, where the funding sources are. And so we put together, for example, a booklet on how to run your business, how to start a business in Mercer County.
You also fund businesses in startups.
We
correct?
have a Mercer County's loan fund, which is for smaller businesses. We do workshops, which we've increased this year through partnerships with the Small Business Development Center at TCNJ, with Union County Economic Development Corporation, UCEDC, on helping smaller businesses that want to either expand, how they can bid on government contracts, a whole range of different topics, and entrepreneurs who want to just know how to start a business, A to Z. We have expanded. We should be hearing about our approval within the next couple months. We have a foreign trade zone. We're one of the few counties.
Which I didn't realize till I started looking. I mean, where do you find a foreign trade zone in Mercer County?
Well, it was started actually under Bob's administration. We have expanded. It used to be only in certain portions of the county you could locate a foreign trade zone, a company operating in a foreign trade zone. We have worked with the Foreign Trade Zone Board in DC and applied to expand our ability to allow for foreign trade zone businesses anywhere within the county borders, so that if a company wants to go to Princeton or to Robbinsville or to Trenton, they will be allowed to set up as a FTZ as long as they get their approvals they need as a company.
And what advantages does that actually give a company?
It has trade in terms of tariffs that they need to pay. They can bring goods in, work on the goods, and until they go back into this trade stream, they do not have to pay the duties that they would have had to pay if they weren't in a foreign trade zone. I mean, we recommend every company do a cost-benefit analysis before they decide whether it's worth setting up as that, because the rules are very strict as to how you set up. There's got to be only certain portions of your trade floor that are in the zone, and we currently have two companies, Conair and Mercedes. Mercedes is out in Robbinsville, Conair is in East Windsor. Since we've decided to expand the borders, two more, Kenco in Robbinsville, one of the new companies that have moved in since 2011, and Hutchinson Industries in Trenton are now applying to get into the foreign trade zone. So, and we're expecting that number to increase even more once we get our approvals. So that's been a successful program. And we're also doing a strategic study of the airport. That is a great economic opportunity, the airport we have out in Ewing. And we did the study, it paid for it through the passenger facility charge, so it did not come out of county tax dollars. That study should be released by the end of the year, and we've been working with Ewing Township also as part of a whole economic development plan for that area, including the GM site, the former GM site there, and just looking at what is the best way to redevelop that airport and the grounds that we have, the developable parcels surrounding it.
So you've got a lot of unique opportunities here in Mercer County.
Yeah, we do.
Some of the properties you've got, and obviously your location, and the fact that state government is located here as well, I would assume.
And we have 5 higher education institutions within one county. I think we're unique in that. You know, we have the county college, we have Thomas Edison, we have Rider, Princeton University, and TCNJ. And most of them all have major building projects on tap for the next few years. There was just an article in the paper yesterday. Princeton University has at any time 1,000 construction workers on site working on their different projects. So that alone. TCNJ is doing a downtown project. They're doing like a town center. We have a huge solar project coming in at Mercer
Here,
County.
which I think we'll hear more about in the next
Yeah,
panel too.
so
Terrific.
lots of stuff happening.
Now, Bob, I know you've actually formed an independent organization within the Mercer County Chamber
Correct.
to focus on economic development.
Correct. We call it the Growth Partnership. And it's designed to help spur economic development, economic growth, to work with governmental agencies, both the county, local government, state government as well, and the various agencies and state governments, which can sort of add to part of the equation when companies look to relocate here or to stay here or to grow here. And so that organization right now has been focused on developing data, hard data, which describes our core industries, our emerging industries, and even our failing industries, so that we can put that data together, put it to use for county government, state government, what have you, but also for many existing companies, not just those that might be looking to relocate or to expand, but even some companies that are developing their strategic business plans to determine what their targets might be in terms of growth. So we have put together a data bank, so to speak, of information which describes the industry sectors throughout all of central New Jersey, but focused mostly on Mercer County, so that we can provide that data in a number of different ways. For example, one of our larger healthcare organizations about a couple of weeks ago was applying for a major grant from the National Health Institute, and they needed data on our employment-based industry sectors, things like that. We were able to turn it around for them in 24 hours so they can submit their grant. So it's things like that that organization is beginning to do. In addition to that, one of its goals is going to be to create an identity for our area. I mentioned earlier emerging industries. One of the emerging industries which some people are surprised about in our county is the financial industry. Over the past decade, financial and security businesses have grown dramatically in our area here. And one of the reasons for it, when you look into the information, is the events of 9/11. The decentralization of financial companies from New York, Wall Street, into other areas. This is one of the areas that they chose to locate for a number of different reasons. Sort of the quality of the workforce here because of our educational attainment, which, by the way, we are #1 in the state in terms of education categorized by employees. We're #1 in the state in our higher education institutions. But because of the quality of the workforce here, because of the proximity to Wall Street, because of the infrastructure that we have in terms of fiber optics, things like that, made our area here an ideal place for the financial sector and insurance sector. So we're able to provide that kind of data, not just to those industries, but those that support.
Okay.
So it becomes a very critical tool for some businesses that are already here, but also those who want to locate in an area where they do business, you know. So it's those kinds of things that our growth partnership are doing, and we are going to begin a sort of a marketing campaign to identify, give this area a distinct identity, like Silicon Valley or you know, the Research Triangle or what have you, and we're going to be embarking upon that. So that's a collaboration between private sector, public sector agencies to try and give us, in terms of economic development, give us here in this region, you know, a step up, so that, for example, I often say, you know, Choose New Jersey was created to bring businesses from around the world to New Jersey. Well, we want to make sure they choose us if they're choosing New Jersey.
If they're in New Jersey. Let me ask you to put your other hat on now as a board member of the Capital City Redevelopment Corporation. How much of all of these wonderful things that you're doing certainly are going to be great in the area where we are right now? Is this going to impact in Trenton, and is there a way to help Trenton?
Well, we certainly hope so, and I think there is a way to help Trenton. There's no question about it. I think the private sector really is going to have to play a very large role in that redevelopment of the city of Trenton. City of Trenton is key. I mean, I've always believed this through my tenure in office. I think it's key to this whole region because study after study would show that you know, as your urban centers grow and are vibrant, so does the rest of the surrounding areas, you know. And if it is not, if it is in decline, it diminishes the growth potential of surrounding areas as well. So the city of Trenton is key not only for us in Mercer County, but in the counties that make up all of central New Jersey, and even Bucks County, Pennsylvania, quite frankly. I've often said that businesses look at the sphere of economic influence, and that economic influence is not determined by political boundaries, geographic boundaries. It's determined by where business is done.
Exactly.
And this is where it's done, and we are the core. We're the hub, I believe, in all of New Jersey. So the city of Trenton becomes a very critical factor in all of that. And one of the things that we want to do at the CCRC is to see how we can work with other agencies, for example, Mercer County Community College, which is planning a significant campus downtown. Well, we at the CCRC want to see how we can work with Mercer County Community College, City of Trenton, County of Mercer, to take advantage of that kind of development. Thomas Edison College is also looking at some additional development in Trenton.
Now, when was this created, the redevelopment?
Well, this was created, my goodness, back in, I think, Governor Whitman's administration is when it was created. And it just has recently, at the end of the Corzine administration and the beginning of the Christie administration, it was given expanded powers. For example, powers to bond. Okay, so we now have bonding authority. So we're able to do some things financially to give more flexibility to...
I noticed that you have the state treasurer as well on your board.
State treasurer's on the board, as well as a number of other cabinet level officials are on that board.
In this administration? Is that new, or is that always
been? No, that always had been.
Okay.
That always had been. And the makeup changed a little bit, but the real differences now is the greater authority that the Capital City Redevelopment Corporation has in terms of financing projects, becoming a redeveloper itself, if it chose to do so. And I think, again, it just provides another tool, another mechanism to help create redevelopment projects in the city of Trenton.
And Liz, when you all, obviously you have the whole county, which has wide disparities in affluence and all kinds of opportunities for people. What efforts, special efforts, is the county making in Trenton? Do you work largely with the state, with this corporation? Or?
We work with the city. We don't have a seat on the CCRC. We attend. We send people to attend the meetings, but we don't have a vote on the group. Our offices obviously are located. We're in the county seat. That's Trenton. We've been working with the county college on the Kearney campus upgrade, which will be a significant contribution to the city, and we're very much looking forward to that. When you make an area a center of learning, it can only benefit the area. Thomas Edison, as Bob just mentioned, just graduated their largest class in the history of the school. The number of people attending, getting their degrees from that institution has increased. We have some companies that are moving into the city. Clark Caton and Hintz just did a fantastic renovation of the Masonic Temple, the upper floor there, and moved their architectural business down into the city from the West Trenton train station where they had been located previously.
Is that a specific emphasis for the county to try to get a focus on Trenton and to try to get things improved in Trenton, or?
Yeah, I mean, because of home rule, we really, we have a redevelopment area in the county sort of that the MCIA helps kind of manage with the city. We are building, almost finished, with a courthouse that is right down in the heart of the city. Should be open by December. So we've had a lot of activity going on down there. It's been, I think it's a $60 million facility. We have enough LEED points in there to be a LEED Gold facility if they all get approved. There are a lot of roadway improvements we're working with the city on in that whole area to improve traffic flow. We've been looking at redevelopment options for the former Roebling factory buildings that are down.
So it sounds like there are a lot of things on the drawing board.
There are, it's clearly there are challenges, but that's our county, that's our home down there. That's where we all work. We all want to see the city succeed. I think everybody up here does, and as Bob said, that's that's the center of our county. That's our capital city, and so we're always looking at what we can do to help.
And Peter, let me switch gears a little bit with you. You're Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce, but let's talk about the regional aspect. You have a number of operations in localities and municipalities around the state, the county. What would you say is happening right now? Are there specific efforts going on in some of those localities, the municipalities?
There are, and I think it's generated a lot because of people choose to live and work here. I mean, we have opportunities with East Windsor and West Windsor, working there trying to both develop a downtown approach. You see this happening in the Market Fair. Market Fair is going through a dramatic expansion. LensCrafter and Barnes & Noble and Eastern Mountain Sports are all expanding significantly there. So you're seeing the local localities. We work with the mayors in all these locations to help them understand what the focus best is. We've worked with a number of companies, several in the periphery, and it's Mercer County, but I always see it as being the general area, and I include some of the Plainsboro market because they consider themselves part of Mercer County, with Novo Nordisk and others that are expanding up there. You know, we were actively involved in that with Mercanto. We're actually involved with Princeton Healthcare moving over there and maintaining that opportunity. So we really try to work with the mayors and their local development opportunities. Not only does Liz have an organization, but each locality has their own business development. And we find that by being able to make those connections, being able to connect the mayors and the locales with the opportunities that we find coming through us, that's where the opportunity really grows. The regional aspect of what we've done provides for, it's funny, people will come to Hamilton, they'll come to East Windsor, but they say they're coming to the Princeton region. Right. So for us, we've tried to take that brand and really expand it and take that as the opportunity, both in tourism, both in economic development, and in the lifestyle that we have here for our market. We've got great rail transportation, we're close to the shore, but we're a great central location, and people, when they understand that, when they see the facts and the figures coming out of what they can do. BlackRock, as an example, when BlackRock decided to stay, they had talked to us and we gave them information of why their employees will stay here. They wanted to make sure their employees liked it here.
So it's a quality of life is an essential aspect.
It really comes down to that. And I'll give you a quick example. Princeton University, when I first took this job over, I met with all the universities and the colleges, and Princeton said, well, you know, we want you to make sure you maintain that lifestyle. And we said, why? They said, because when we have professors, not just students, professors who would choose between Harvard and UP and other Ivies, they want them to stay, to live here. They want them to understand this is the culture, this is the community they want to live in. And that's been very successful, both for the educational side and the corporate side. So we think that has been a real catalyst as to why companies relocate here and why their employees stay here. So we're very excited about that.
Let me ask each one of you to weigh in quickly on the merger. Princeton Borough and Princeton Township, I think, are the only towns in the state,
yeah,
that have successfully merged and will be voting in just a few weeks on their first new town council and mayor. Is this going to improve the economy in terms of reducing costs of government? As we all the time we keep hearing that this is something that's got to happen in New Jersey, that's imperative for us if we're going to reduce the costs of doing business and make it better for businesses to operate. Will it have an impact on your membership?
Well, I don't think it'll have an impact on the membership at all. I think, in fact, it's funny you mention it. We have a luncheon next month, which will have both the mayoral candidates talk about their vision of what the consolidated Princetons look like. It's been a rocky road. It's been a road that they chose, I think, correctly. And they're making the plan right now. There's no plan to go focus on this. I think a lot of folks are watching. I think a lot of municipalities are looking and saying, if they can do it well, if they get through this without a problem, there is a cost savings, but I don't think it was designed to specifically save money, because you're not looking at downside. A corporation would merge and tend to downsize. I think time will tell, but everything I've seen as we work through the process is positive. And I think the borough and the township have come together in a great opportunity to make this happen.
And Liz, from your perspective, from the county's perspective, is this a good thing economically? Will it have a positive impact on business development?
On business development, I don't know. I guess to the extent it could help in terms of business development, it's one, one group you go see if you want to locate in the Princetons.
Well, one of the things we're going to talk about in the next panel is, in education, this report was just released that talks about a culture of overregulation in education. And that's certainly one of the criticisms that we hear in New Jersey all the time, is that there's a culture of overregulation. So from that perspective, I would think businesses hopefully will view this as a positive.
Right, and I think that's part of, even if it's not a cost savings, and when they voted on consolidating last year, there was a report that had been done prior to the decision to put it on the ballot that showed there would be, I believe, over $1 million in cost savings if the two merge. But it's also a streamlining of processes. As you have one police department, you have one zoning board, one planning board, one set of permits you need. Princeton University is in both municipalities currently right now. The borough itself is really very small, but there are, companies that kind of have to deal with both municipalities, and that will obviously, improve. So.
Bob, from your perspective?
Well, I think the trend is important. I think companies, New Jersey is filled with these kinds of situations. And so I think that what companies look for is stability and certainty. And I think this trend, this consolidation, if it continues throughout the rest of the state, excuse me, will have a significant impact, I think. We always hear how companies look toward the tax rates and all these kinds of things. They're important, but the most important thing is quality of life. And I think this kind of consolidation adds to the quality of life. Regulation, again, I think this kind of consolidation enhances companies' ability to deal with one entity and not numerous entities, and the certainty that's involved here. So I think as we go along, the success of the Princetons bodes well, I think, for the rest of the state, and hopefully other municipalities will follow suit. And it's the sense of efficiency.
Yes.
Whether it's dollars and cents or whether it's just being able to get an answer.
It should help.
Is very, very important. And I think in a long term, absolutely, it will help the economic climate in New Jersey. Yes.
Great. Well, we're nearing the end of our allotted time here, so let's do a little lightning round. Ask each one of you to give me a quick answer. What's the best thing that's happened for the economy in Mercer County in the past year? And what's the worst thing that's happened to the county? Not necessarily something that has been caused by the county, but just what's had the most negative, the most positive, and the most negative impact on the economy in the past year. Peter, what would you say?
I'd say the most positive has been the, I'll call it the change in attitude for companies to not leave our region, to stay and relocate. Church and Dwight made that change to stay and relocate. Novo Nordisk made that change. Sparta Systems. So the companies are now finding out and understanding that this is a great opportunity.
And obviously that ripple effect kind of
across the board.
PR for the
you see it both as it's got the largest, most educated workforce. It's got great opportunities for education. So all these pieces that have been there are now coming together, and companies are understanding that. I think the biggest negative is we're still seeing a flight of capital and a flight of talent out of the region, and that's a number of factors cause that to happen. But if I have one wish, I'll add a wish. I'll wish that our young students coming out of the schools, both foreign students and domestic students, decide to stay. Our problem is we have great educational facilities. We teach kids all these great ideas, and they leave and they go somewhere else. We want them to stay.
If they're going to school here in the county, the chances that they're going to stay here are vastly
higher,
right?
are higher, and we want to give them reasons to want to stay here.
Great. Liz?
I agree with Peter in terms of the best thing that's happened this past year is the fact that the trend has definitely turned in favor of staying, expanding, attracting new businesses, and I think the news coming down the pike is going to be even better. So I think that, and it does have a ripple effect. We go to these, all three of us, these meetings around the county and with business leaders, and I think people feel optimistic, and I think probably just the overall economy nationally and the news you read has been probably the biggest thing we've had to fight against in terms of a negative issue for the county. And I guess if you look strictly, at county borders, county tax base, and revenue, the biggest loss we had as a county was when Princeton Hospital went across the border into Plainsboro. So technically, we lost it as a business per se, but it's so close that it still comes. The employees all still come into the county. They didn't have to move. They shop here. But I guess if you're just looking strictly at county borders, that was our biggest loss of a.
Okay. And if you could have one wish, what would it be? One thing that could happen. What would be the best thing that could happen to impact the economy positively in Mercer County? Doesn't necessarily have to be in your control. What would be the best thing that could happen?
Just a continued positive trend. I think continued good news, because people, when they're in a hopeful economic environment, they become more creative. Entrepreneurs stay. As Peter said, we have such a highly educated workforce, and as Bob mentioned, it's the most highly educated in the state. The potential there for new startups. The bulk of our nation's economy are small businesses. To get these students to stay here and the talent we have here to remain here and see this positive economic trend as a reason to stay, I guess that's what I would hope for, that we can keep that base here.
Best, worst?
I think the best is the emerging recognition of Mercer County and its surrounding areas as a emerging hotbed for technology, biochemical, pharmaceutical, and transportation industries. We neglect to sometimes recognize the fact that we are emerging as a transportation logistical hub in all of the state of New Jersey. If you go out into Robbinsville area and places where warehousing and transportation services are key, it's a tremendously growing industry. So I think the recognition of that emergence, of the transition in our economy, healthcare is another one. Just with the opening of the new, it's true it's in Middlesex County, but Princeton University Medical Center is as Mercer County as you can get. And Capital Health, and the opening of those two facilities, which are state-of-the-art in not only the nation but the world. I think the recognition of that, transportation, technology and finance, as I mentioned, I think that's the biggest positive that I see in terms of our economy here. The biggest negative in my mind is the city of Trenton, frankly. I think the troubles and the woes that have been widely publicized about the city of Trenton are a huge drag on our economy. And I think we have to absolutely focus on changing that, which will be an incentive, a generator, a shot in the arm, I think, to the area, because I think that really has been a drag, quite frankly.
And you've got things in place. You've had some positive changes in Trenton.
Absolutely.
What's the one thing that Trenton really needs to improve?
I think Trenton really needs the emergence of the private sector. One or two major private sector companies, industries to change the imbalance in terms of the dominance of government in the city of Trenton. Right. And so if we had one major corporation and the conglomerate of education, which is happening, I think that's the key. So between those two, our educational institutions and a private sector, corporation, I think that's key for the city of Trenton.
And there are plans. Dan Brennan has a plan, and Andy Sussman, for development around the train station in Trenton. We were hoping they could take care of the urban transit tax credit that was being offered by the state. That credit has now been made available to. You don't have to be within a half mile of a train center. So there's not that advantage that there were for urban centers as much anymore. But there are plans for state-of-the-art facilities to be located right near the Trenton, now it's called the Trenton Transit Center. which we really, if we could find the right tenant, it
Absolutely.
would transform, no question, that area.
Question on it.
And that's a model that works. I mean, you look at areas that have fallen down and how they turn around. It's having that one or two companies that takes the opportunity to buck the trend and come in. And if you can get that started, it ripples. It really does. And you just need that one company to step up and make it happen. And I think that'll start the whole process.
And the fact that we no longer have UEZs, the urban enterprise zones, am I correct? Those have been, there's discussion about whether those are going to continue to exist.
Right, I think that's what the governor's office is proposing. Trenton is a UEZ.
And are you looking to that to have an impact if those are taken away? Will that have a negative impact on Mercer County?
You mean on the city?
Well, on the county itself. If the UEZs are no longer given if you no longer have the ability to create an urban enterprise.
If something isn't, maybe if it's not substituted with something else that provides an advantage for business to locate in those areas, it could have a harmful effect. Okay.
And you know, we did our first one of these series last week in Middlesex County. You're the second of 12. And Middlesex has wonderful news about, you know, emerging energy developments coming forward. You've got exciting news about things that are happening in Mercer. How does all this fit into the state economy, where we're still lagging behind the nation as a whole in unemployment? Do you feel that we're are you just kind of a little island here, kind of separate from the state, or how do you impact the state's economy with all the good things that are happening here? Is that?
I think we're on the leading cusp of that. I really do. I think there's parts of the state, we're such a diverse state when you look at us. I mean, from north to south, we're very diverse. And,
within the county, you're diverse. I mean,
within the county, we're diverse, but the state's tremendously diverse. I mean, you've got the shore, you've got the mountains, you've got Central Jersey, you've got South Jersey. So I think as we better understand that we're all Jersey, you know, that as the business community understands that, you know, it isn't north and central and south, it's all of New Jersey. That's what's important. And I think as we start bringing that message out there, I think you'll start seeing the opportunities continue to flourish.
Great, and I'm going to have you let that be your last word, unless there's something else you want to throw in there. Liz,
great.
Last word from you.
I just think I agree with Peter that we are at the leading edge in terms of counties in the state, and it's just my hope that I have nothing but high hopes for our trajectory, and thanks to the work of everybody up here and very engaged community leaders and residents, I have no reason to think that we aren't going to continue to trend very high. So
very, very optimistic. Yeah. Bob?
Well, we here in Mercer County, in this part of the state, generally, in terms of every economic category, generally do better than the rest of the state for all the reasons we talked about. And so I think that what we're doing in terms of, again, I point to our emerging industries, I think is going to have a positive effect throughout the state of New Jersey. And I think as long as we continue in terms of our leadership in education, our leadership in healthcare, our leadership in quality of life, I think you know, that's just going to bode well for the state. And they're all building blocks. Nothing happens overnight. We've just come through one of the worst economic times since the Great Depression. And in New Jersey, that's been exacerbated somewhat because of our location, you know, because of you know, some of the other complexities of this state. But all of the things we've been talking about are building blocks, and I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think it's going to have a very positive impact statewide.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here and for ending on all of you very optimistic, and we'll look forward to watching all the developments in Mercer County in the coming months and the year ahead. And thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you.